Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us this Faith Nation Wednesday. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I am David Brody. So today we're focusing on North Korea. And to help us break down the threat North Korea poses to American security, our national security correspondent Erik Rosales joining us here in studio.
And Ben Kennedy is at the White House with a look at Vice President Pence's visit to South Korea for the Olympics and the warning that he is giving North Korea, not mincing words. But we want to begin with Erik.
That's all right. Erik, first of all, the Olympics kick off in South Korea on Friday. Is that causing heightened concern for the Trump administration?
Oh, it mostly is, David and Jenna. You know, since taking office, President Trump has made it clear that he wants to keep North Korea a very top priority. And with the vice president visiting the region this week, the administration's demands of denuclearization, that is put on a bigger stage, the stage of the 2018 Winter Olympics. Not long after entering office, President Trump encountered an international challenge confronting North Korea after it tested an intercontinental ballistic missile.
This is a real threat to the world, whether we want to talk about it or not. North Korea is a big world problem.
The North wasn't done. Its dictator Kim Jong-un then ordered a test of its most powerful nuclear weapon yet, a hydrogen bomb, and then ordered a test of a ballistic missile that scientists say could hit anywhere in the continental U.S.
It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world.
Both the United States and the United Nations took action by sanctioning North Korea and threatening those that would do business with it.
Foreign banks will face a clear choice: do business with the United States or facilitate trade with the lawless regime in North Korea, and they won't have so much trade.
Kim Jong-un fired back, calling the president deranged and that the U.S. would pay dearly. During the next provocation, the U.S. military answered with its first successful live-fire intercept, taking down a mock North Korean ICBM.
If they stopped their shooting missiles, stopped developing nukes, stopped building more nukes, we could talk.
CBN News traveled with Defense Secretary James Mattis to NORAD in Colorado as he took an up-close look at the U.S. missile defense system inside the Cheyenne Mountain complex. Mattis told CBN News if North Korea agreed, he would set the conditions to bring the rogue country to the table.
More economic sanctions, diplomatic persona non grata from a number of nations around the world. It's all designed to bring diplomatic and economic pressure on North Korea to change its course.
But whether the North will change remains unclear. That means joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea will continue in the region after the upcoming Winter Olympics. During those games in Seoul, athletes from both the North and South Korea plan to march together under one flag. Some see the North's participation as nothing more than a ploy to buy more time to develop their missile arsenal.
The next steps would be denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is our #1 priority and certainly what we would like to see.
And just within the past hour, I've learned that Kim Jong-un is sending his younger sister to South Korea for the Winter Olympics. Now, this is the first time that anyone from the Kim regime has ever been in that country, and I'd have to say that this is definitely good news for diplomacy as the talks continue, because it's unlikely that Kim Jong-un will do anything with his younger sister there. Now, unlike his brother, who there have been reports that he killed, his younger sister does not pose any threat to his leadership in that country.
Right. There is so much to dissect with you. So
So
we're gonna have Erik on set with us for most of the show. Make sure you're commenting, by the way, below, wherever that is, below, with any questions you might have about North Korea. Our national security correspondent Erik Rosales back with us. We'll be checking back with you in a moment. Thanks, Erik.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
All right. Good.
All right, thank you, Erik. Well, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Vice President Pence is on his way to South Korea.
That's right. He is leading the presidential delegation attending the 2018 Winter Olympics, which kicks off in just 2 days.
Yeah, first, though, he made a stop in Japan where he had some tough words for North Korea. Ben Kennedy is live at the White House with the warning Vice President Pence had for the regime. Ben.
Well, good afternoon, Jenna. Vice President Mike Pence confirmed that he will not shy away from calling out the rogue regime. In fact, today he announced the U.S. will soon unveil what he calls, quote, the toughest and most aggressive rounds of economic sanctions against North Korea. Now, that is a very bold statement by the vice president. This as he met with the Prime Minister of Japan, where he reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to the region.
On behalf of President Trump, the United States is with you in this challenge, and we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Japan, the people of South Korea, and our allies and partners across the region until we achieve the global objective of the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and we end the provocations and threats that North Korea has presented to this region and to the wider world.
The Vice President is now wrapping up his time in Japan, with his next stop being South Korea. David, Jenna?
Yeah, Ben, let me ask you, the Vice President was very strategic in who he picked as his special guest for the opening ceremony. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, David, you're right. He was very strategic. In fact, Fred Warmbier will be joining the presidential delegation for the opening ceremonies. If you remember, Fred Warmbier is the father of Otto Warmbier. Let's show you an image of him right now. He died last year after being imprisoned in North Korea. Last week, Warmbier and his wife made an emotional appearance during the State of the Union. It is there the president highlighted their son's story to call out North Korea. Back live to the White House, it is here the administration officials say Warmbier's appearance will only highlight the atrocities happening in North Korea. David, Jenna, back to you.
All right, Ben Kennedy live for us at the White House. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. All right, back with our national security correspondent, Erik Rosales. Erik, let's talk about this. The Vice President obviously warning about these new sanctions. What about these sanctions, if they come? How does that impact North Korea?
Oh, it's going to impact North Korea very strongly. I mean, we are talking about the toughest sanctions that have ever taken place, the most aggressive sanctions. Now, we're trying to get details on exactly what these sanctions are. We do know that there are going to be economic sanctions against them, but as of right now, the White House is not providing very much detail on exactly what they are just yet. But North Korea, as we know, is already facing sanctions from the United Nations Security Council, and these sanctions have literally crippled the country. You know, the export of oil, and you could see that capped fuel imports, also capped the nation's export revenue. And we've seen a number of ships in the area that have actually tried to get oil into North Korea from Chinese. And it's going to be interesting to see on whether or not we're going to be going after some of these Chinese banks.
Yeah. Well, Erik, you know, the Vice President and this administration hasn't necessarily ruled out meeting with this regime, right?
That's right. Pence told reporters over there that he is actually considering meeting with them if it happens. But also a number of reporters who are on the ground there and at the Olympics have said that the Vice President has specifically said that he does not want to sit next to the North Koreans. But if they happen to have a meeting, he says that he'll be happy to have one.
Yeah, that could be a little awkward.
It could be very awkward. It could be very awkward.
Yeah, I will say this, though. He has no problem, obviously, talking to the defectors
Right.
of North Korea. Much different there.
That's right. On Friday, he's expected to speak to about 5 defectors there. As we know, President Trump has already used a defector and during the State of the Union address, and that's going to be big news. But, you know, the same message to North Korea is going to be the same as it was a few months ago, as a few years ago, or when President Trump got into office. It's going to be that North Korea must renounce its nuclear program, its missile program, and become denuclearized for the entire Korean Peninsula.
I mean, they don't want to do it.
They don't want to do it. They don't want to do
They're
it.
not gonna do that.
And it's going to get to the place where we're going to have to continue with these sanctions or talks, or the other option is a precision type of strike.
Yeah, what you talked about. All right.
All right, thank you guys. Of course, we want to weigh in with all of you and look at your comments, so please make sure you're commenting below, liking, sharing with all of your friends. Amber, what are people saying?
Well, this conversation definitely has people talking, specifically some questions for you, Erik, and comments for you. This one is about our nuclear defenses because, you know, we've talked a lot about what North Korea is doing, but is the U.S. ready to intercept any incoming missiles that may come our way?
I am here to say that I have been to NORAD. I have been to Colorado Springs, to the Missile Defense Center itself. We are capable of shooting down anything that North Korea throws at us right now. We have defenses, the THAAD defense missile system, not only in South Korea, but we also have missile defense systems in Alaska and also in California, and we can handle anything that North Korea throws at us.
Yeah. We also got this comment. This is for Kimberly about the Olympic Games in general and it being in South Korea. She said, "It's a dangerous time to be there, but love to our South Korean friends and the hidden ones in North Korea. God bless all of God's children. And I think that's something definitely to think about, is that the people of North Korea who are the ones suffering at the hands of the leadership there. Because there's sometimes where we get so heated in the defending ourselves, but we forget about all the people who are still on the ground, their innocent lives there.
Yeah, the humanitarian side. Yeah. Thank you, Amber. Well, coming up, from his near death at the hands of the North Korean regime to a distinguished guest of the Trump administration.
Israel and the Middle East, center of the world for thousands of years, and still creating headlines that reach back to the Bible. CBN News makes that connection each week with the groundbreaking program, Jerusalem Dateline.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline.
Hosted by award-winning correspondent Chris Mitchell, Jerusalem Dateline brings a Christian perspective to events that literally change history.
Expect as many as 1 million people here in Tahrir Square. Right now we're just running back into the bomb shelter. The siren just went off.
We take you to the action, whether it's the front lines or underground, digging into the past for discoveries.
Here, reaching out.
Or in the footsteps of Jesus. Jerusalem Dateline is your window to Israel, Jerusalem, and the Middle East.
We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
If you would like to broadcast Jerusalem Dateline or want more information, contact us at the address on your screen.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
To hit middle school and start having same-sex attractions was just very confusing, because I had accepted the Lord when I was a little girl.
Right in the middle of this holiness code is a reference to homosexual practice.
I don't think Christians have anything to fear from research, from science done well.
They're like, oh, this is awful. You don't let him in the house, do you?
So during his first State of the Union address last week, President Trump took time to honor one of his guests. It was a North Korean defector.
Yeah, we got the chance to sit down and hear firsthand the suffering he endured in North Korea and the hope he found that led him to flee. One of the highlights of the president's State of the Union speech came when the president honored North Korean defector Seong-ho, who responded by standing up on his prosthetic leg and thrusting his crutches over his head. Why did the double amputee who almost starved and was tortured by North Korean authorities do that? It was for his family, most of whom also escaped, his translator told CBN News.
The North Korean regime, there was a lot of oppression to prevent them from leaving the country, but they ended up leaving, escaping, and ended up surviving, and he raised his crutches as to symbolize victory.
President Trump talked about G's torture after he'd been in China.
His tormentors wanted to know if he'd met any Christians. He had.
Those Christians made him realize a universal truth.
There is someone else outside the world that sympathizes him and loves him, unlike the North Korean leader.
This man who used to live just to survive now testifies of his faith.
After he got to know God, his life just changed significantly, and he says now he's living for spreading love.
President Trump told of that moment G, as a starving boy, was almost killed by a train in 1996 as he was trying to get some coal to exchange for food.
He passed out on the train tracks, exhausted from hunger. He woke up as a train ran over his limbs.
Trump also spoke of G's siblings.
His brother and sister gave what little food they had to help him recover, and ate dirt themselves, permanently stunting their own growth.
G said their health is now good, but those were horrid times.
They used to suffer so much, like they had to eat like grass on the ground, and sometimes just digging trash for food.
Ji eventually escaped North Korea on a long journey on his crutches, and he looks at Trump's recognition as just one of many God moments in his life.
God has been providing him many opportunities to do good works through him.
And while honoring Ji during the State of the Union, the president called his quest for freedom, and this is a quote, an inspiration to us all.
All right, Erik Rosales back with us now. Erik, boy, talk about trying to send a message. I mean, this president.
Oh, strong, powerful message.
Yeah, tell me about that.
I tell you what, you know, when you start talking about human rights atrocities that are taking place inside this Kim regime, you know, we saw not only that at the State of the Union, but we also saw what happened when the soldier ended up crossing the DMZ down there, and he was shot 5 times, and while he was in the hospital, they ended up finding parasites inside of his stomach. But what's interesting is South Korea ended up using that and other defectors as a way to let the North Korean people know that there is life out there. There is possibilities of having a different life for themselves. They ended up setting up those big megaphone speakers that went some 12 miles into the North Korean country to let them know the condition of the soldier. And I tell you what, that is what you have to do with these people. You have to let them know, because a lot of them, they don't have internet access. They don't know that there's a world out there. All they hear is the propaganda day in, day out, that America is against them, that they want to kill us, and our mighty supreme leader is there to protect us.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the word propaganda. Lester Holt and NBC got kind of involved in this controversy where they went over, of course, to North Korea, and he broadcast live over there, and then they went in front of the ski slope, and normally it's just there's nobody there, and it's but instead they basically the North Korean regime kind of bussed people in to make it look like it's bustling. I mean, it's all about winning the propaganda war.
It's all about winning the propaganda war, showing the world that life inside North Korea is not as bad as it appears.
Let me ask you real quick, what happens if you're in North Korea, you want to defect? I mean, what basically is a potential issue there in terms of what might happen?
Oh, I tell you what, I mean, these prison camps, it is the absolute worst. There's anywhere from 150,000 to 200,000 people inside these prison camps. We're talking about 40% of them die of malnourished.
I know, Amber, we're getting so many comments. People really passionate about this.
Yes, definitely. Speaking of the humanitarian crisis, this one from Mary, she said, keep prayers daily lifted for the situation, for peace in the works. North Korean citizens suffering from the horrors of slave labor camps and starvation, which is something that we touched on in that last piece. And then another one, this one from Brenda on Facebook, who says, God bless these families from North Korea who did what they had to do to escape an evil dictator. Yeah. And I think just looking into the stories of some of these people is something we're going to do a little bit later in the show. But just the horrors and the atrocities of the North Koreans.
Yeah, and talking about the defector, the North Korean defector, I like this comment. Yvonne said, he is a hero, which I think is so true. His story is so remarkable, such a powerful moment during the State of the Union.
Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Israel and the Middle East, center of the world for thousands of years, and still creating headlines that reach back to the Bible. CBN News makes that connection each week with the groundbreaking program, Jerusalem Dateline.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline.
Hosted by award-winning correspondent Chris Mitchell, Jerusalem Dateline brings a Christian perspective to events that literally change history.
Expect as many as 1 million people here in Tahrir Square. Right now we're just running back into the bomb shelter. The siren just went off.
We take you to the action, whether it's the front lines or underground, digging into the past for discoveries.
Here, reaching out.
Or in the footsteps of Jesus. Jerusalem Dateline is your window to Israel, Jerusalem, and the Middle East.
We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
If you would like to broadcast Jerusalem Dateline or want more information, contact us at the address on your screen.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
to hit middle school and start having same-sex attractions was just very confusing because I had accepted the Lord when I was a little girl.
Right in the middle of this holiness code is a reference to homosexual practice.
I don't think Christians have anything to fear from research, from science done well.
They're like, oh, this is awful. You don't let him in the house, do you?
And we have a bit of breaking news for you. Senator McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, is on the floor introducing a bipartisan deal for the budget.
Yeah, and apparently this budget agreement is going to fund new grants. It's going to also fund prevention programs, law enforcement efforts in these vulnerable communities we hear about across the country, like the opioid crisis and all of that. And so this is a 2-year budget deal. This is what we understand. And you know, once again, this doesn't necessarily, this has nothing to do with DACA. DACA, it looks like, once again, another Trump victory. Remember, Schumer, the Democrats, shut the government down over DACA. They wanted the budget deal with DACA, but instead, it looks like what we're seeing here is it's all going to be funding of government certain programs, but DACA not included. That will be done separately because, let's face it, it's immigration, and that's going to take a while. So.
Yeah, I'm on, this is Chuck Schumer speaking right there. Right. On his Twitter page, he says, heading to the floor with news on the budget. Tune in now. That's interesting. His Twitter picture is the I stand with dreamers. So.
Right. Well, all right, so more to come on DACA for sure. Just seeing if there's any other final details here, but it looks like they're calling it a significant budget deal agreement, and I think they're calling it significant because they're saying this is a 2-year deal, which, you know, in congressional language, 2 years is like, you know, infinity, because, boy, these folks, they go 4 weeks at a time, and it's pretty pathetic. So,
of course, you keep it here on Twitter, and of course, CBNnews.com. We'll be updating you throughout the day as we learn more.
Okay. All right, Amber.
All right, I think we want to bring Amber in now.
Yeah, all show long we've been kind of talking about the atrocities of North Korea, just getting back to that. But despite those atrocities committed by the North Korean regime, often in pop culture you see this kind of lack of concern or making light of the issue. Where earlier today I talked with Faith Wire's Dan Andros on why that could be. Take a look. Hey Dan, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Amber.
You know, there is a very serious undertone when it comes to North Korea, but then you kind of see this lighthearted approach in popular culture. Do the American people get it, particularly our comedians and our movie makers?
Yeah, I think we kind of understand. We hear about these things happening. So yes, cognitively we understand, but I don't think we really truly get it because North Korea is so secretive. And their media is so shut down that we don't see it. So I don't think we can fully comprehend the extent of the evil that's happening there. And I think it's a real problem that, and normally I give comedians and people a wide leash on sort of the jokey type stuff. But I mean, but there's a reason why we don't see people joking about genocides and the Holocaust, because there's really nothing funny about it. There's no way to make it funny at all. And I believe that that's the exact same level of situation that we have happening in North Korea. And when a comedian like a Chelsea Handler comes out and tweets a couple months ago, you know, equating North Korea and the atrocities going on there to what Donald Trump is doing here. I mean, I just think that's the sort of thing that is so, to me, out of bounds, and just wildly wrong. And, you know, I think her quote was, "We should trade Trump for, you know, Kim Jong-un." And I just wanted to highlight, I think, one example of the atrocities that are going on there to understand just how misguided a comment like that is. You know, we got a story here that we reported on FaithWire just this week of a senior government of a daughter of a government official. So this is someone with protection in North Korea, and so she eventually got out, but witnessed these atrocities. And one of them was 11 musicians. Who were summarily executed. They were rounded up and accused of making explicit films or something of that nature, but it was basically just an excuse to keep the people in line. But they took these 11 musicians out and brought them out in front of a crowd of 10,000 people. They were lashed at the end of an anti-aircraft guns, multiple of, 11 of them, each on their own anti-aircraft gun. The guns were fired, and that just absolutely pulverized these people, just killed them instantly, and crushed them into just a million pieces. And it's just not helpful when we downplay it and joke. I think what it does is it desensitizes us to what's really going on.
You mentioned some of the atrocities going on, but on the flip side, you say God is on the move in North Korea. How so?
Yeah, and I think we're just seeing we're scratching the surface on the amazing testimonies that are happening right now in the worst place to live on planet Earth, North Korea. We just had another one, a North Korean defector. Now, listen, they can't even give, her name is Esther, that's all she would give. She describes this incredible situation to Open Doors, an organization that reports on persecution around the world of Christians. And she describes being put into one of the infamous North Korean prison camps, the labor camps, and they're sort of packed in there like sardines, 40 people in this little small cell. And she notices this one elderly woman. She's kind of old and frail, but she's peaceful and calm, and just has something different about her. And so she asked her, she said, "What's going on with you? Why are you so calm?" And she answered that at one point, in her life, she was in China, and she said, "God treated me like a princess there." And she was like, "Okay." And she's like, I kind of mocked her, and I was like, "Okay, well, I want to be a princess too." And so the woman turns and said, "All right, well then pray just like me." And so she starts praying, and she says, "Thank you, God, for everything. Do what you wish in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen." Now, again, this is in the setting of them all jammed together like sardines in a North Korean prison. And she was just blown away by this. And that woman, they nicknamed her God's princess, and she actually shared the gospel with everybody that she could in that prison, pretty much almost everyone in their immediate vicinity. And she was eventually released from prison, this elderly woman, which never happens there. And eventually, this woman who's telling the story, obviously, she managed to secure her release too, which was an incredible blessing and something that doesn't happen there. But she escaped to China, and then she said the first thing she did was attend a Bible study. Now she's a believer.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you, Dan, so much for sharing that. And of course, if our viewers are interested in other amazing, uplifting stories of how God is on the move in the U.S., they can check you guys out at faithwire.com. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, just amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. And like you said, that Open Doors USA and FaithWire has countless stories like that of just people fighting against the odds and overcoming North Korea. We did get some more questions from you guys. Thank you. This one is for Erik. It's from Kenneth. He says, if sanctions don't work, how do we keep us safe from war? What's the next step for us?
Well, that is a great question. I asked the Pentagon the exact same question, and Pentagon officials say that we are ready to fight to war tonight. But they also said in the same breath that we're going to continue these diplomatic relations to try and do it through talk and do it through these sanctions. Like I said, these next sanctions that are coming up, the next round, are going to be even tougher than what the United Nations Security Council put against North Korea. So we just have to wait and see on exactly how tough these sanctions are going to be.
Right. Well, that is going to do it here for Faith Nation on a Wednesday.
Keep commenting and keep putting your post on below, and we will keep up with you after the show. We'll be right here to talk along with you guys.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody.